Hello, everyone, and welcome to the second installment of this year's Pride series. My name is M. Shadi Malaklu, and I am the Chair of Women's and Gender Studies at Berea College and the founding director of its Women's and Gender Nonconforming Center. Thank you for joining us today for a virtual conversation about how the city of Berea and Berea College students might collaborate as they have historically to create queer activism and community. We are joined today by the college's Harvey Milk Society, specifically by its current president, Alex Cockley, and their new advisor, Dr. Meredith Lee. We are also joined by Kai Anderson, the executive director of Berea Pride, a community-based organization that is designed to provide support and services to the LGBTQIA+ community in the city of Berea, in Madison County, and in surrounding counties. In addition to spearheading the Harvey Milk Society, Alex is a first-year gender inclusive housing RA and junior health studies major. She will graduate from Berea College next December 2021 and plans to move to New York afterwards to work with LGBTQIA+ youth. Dr. Meredith Lee is an assistant professor of women's and gender studies at Berea College, where they teach a class on the institutionalization of queer and trans studies. Their research on the quote, wrong body narrative, the assumption that a man is trapped in a woman's body and vice versa, draws on sexological literature, anti-abolitionist texts, theology, transgender studies, and Black studies to think about how anti-Blackness informs our contemporary understandings of transsexuality and transgender identity. Likewise, we are joined today by Kai Anderson. Kai is a 2011 Berea graduate currently on staff at the college, serving as International Student and Scholar Advisor and Incoming Exchange Coordinator for the Center for International Education. As a student, Kai served as the president of the Gay Straight Alliance, or what is now Pulse, for 3 consecutive years. During that time, he helped facilitate drag shows, the first GSA prom, which included voting for King and Queen, and he would like to add that he won King that year, as well as other activities that made space for pride and LGBTQIA+ education on campus. As an out, proud Black trans man, Kai believes that it is important for young members of the LGBTQIA+ community to see themselves represented in the world, including on campus and in the larger Berea community. We are so thrilled to welcome Alex, Dr. Lee, and Kai to this virtual conversation and to think with them about how those of us who also identify as queer and or who are allies can get involved in their efforts to create space for LGBTQIA+ students and community. Before we begin, I'd like to remind the audience that they are welcome to submit questions as the conversation unfolds, either through the chat function or the Q&A function, both of which can be found on your Zoom dashboard below. Rather than wait to answer questions at the end, it is our hope that we will be able to address your questions throughout as you ask them. Last, I would like to remind the audience that we have 2 more Pride events scheduled for this month. We hope that you will consider attending those as well. Our next event, scheduled for tomorrow between 4 and 5 p.m., will feature a timely conversation with the Instagram and podcast sensation Country Queers. They will share insight with us about how to tell rural queer stories in ways that, quote, complicate our collective ideas about rural spaces, not least of all in Appalachia. The Zoom information for that event is listed on our Facebook page as well as on our departmental website. Please join me in welcoming Alex, Dr. Lee, and Kai. Thank you so much for joining us, Alex, Dr. Lee, and Kai, and for making yourselves available for this generative and timely conversation about how to bridge the town and gown divide in Berea. I thought we might start with acknowledging that divide and contextualizing it in the larger context of what it means to study and live at a small liberal arts college. Dr. Lee, do you want to speak a little bit about how what we're seeing in Berea reflects larger trends?
Sure, yeah. From what I've seen, being here in my second year and having gone to quite a few undergrads, quite a few small liberal arts schools, that this is a typical trend that the town oftentimes backlashes against the college. or maybe not even backlashes, but sees it as more of the liberal bubble that doesn't exactly fit within the town politics or ethics. And so I just want to make sure we think about this in a broader scale too, that it's not unique to Berea, that this happens throughout the United States. I went to a small school in northern Wisconsin, and this was a similar dynamic, and they brought in like a co-op and a coffee shop, and it was definitely, people were upset with the school. So that's basically what I wanted to say.
Thank you. Kai or Alex, is there anything you want to add?
I can. So, being here for such a short amount of time, I also grew up in a town where a lot of this did happen. So, I grew up in Pikeville, and back home, there wasn't a lot of representation. And when there was representation, for instance, my senior year, started trying to come up with GSA and everything, and it was received very heavily with backlash. Living in a small town with very few people there, it is an issue. It is an issue that a lot of people want to fight against it, especially because we're already put in this little box. So for the outsiders, I guess, to be put more pressure onto this small group already makes us want to hide. And it also gives a lot more backlash considering that we are the minority in that area, and not having those resources and not having the backup to help us get to where we need to be as people. That can be very difficult considering for younger generations, because you need that support to be able to grow. But if you have no support, you're just going to go back into your little bubble and stay there, and you're going to cling to that bubble because that's all you have.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that, Alex. I mean, because that definitely is the hope of Berea Pride, is to try to bridge that gap between the town and gown. Let the students on campus know that they do have support within the community outside of the campus, and then to help the community engage, in a positive manner with the students. And so that divide is definitely here in Berea, and hopefully we can begin bringing about some change.
Thank you all. A related question. How are queer students on campus tokenized? And does this impact, or how does this impact the way outsiders see Berea? Another way to say this is, are queer students being instrumentalized? And does this impact the queer activism that we're seeing more generally on campus in the city of Berea and Madison County and what have you?
I can take this one. So, coming to a place that's actually very open, it is very hard, because what we have noticed with Harvey Milk and a lot of other places is that it's mostly seen as the white gay man. That's our token. That's like the most acceptable version to like townies and a lot of other people, because that's mostly what's represented in the media. So, like with Harvey Milk, the reason that the name is an issue is because it's a gay white man. And that continues to be the big token of who is represented in the media: gay white men. Who gets the most publicity when it comes to issues and activism? It's gay white men. So, for instance, like people of color that are non-binary or they could be lesbian, they're going to get the most backlash because they are farther away from what the gay white man stereotype is. And especially on this campus, a lot of people, when you think, oh, they have an LGBT community, most people think, oh, there's gay white guys. That's what Harvey Milk was known for a very long time, is because the majority of those people did not agree and didn't think they were getting touched on enough, when most of like social media and that outlet is always for them. So to have that backlash for them kind of caused an issue. And even today, like you will talk to people and like we're starting to change that gap a little bit. So we have like trans representation, we have people of color representation, and it's important to have that because then once you focus on specifically that one type of person, that's all people are going to think of, and they're going to be like, oh, it's not a place for me, because it's always focused on that one group.
Thank you, Alex. I think that's spot on and unfortunate.
I mean, I can say as faculty, like, you know, I don't feel the tokenization probably in the same way as students do. But I do think that Harvey Milk, and we're changing the name. I don't know if Alex wanted to do an outside, but we're definitely going to work to change the name and become more inclusive. That's the reason why, is we want people to feel included, especially, you know, those who are LGBT, but also QAI, PAI, right?
You
And
taught
you
me
know,
that.
asexual. It's in my intro textbook, but so I definitely want, like, you know, people who identify as ace, or who are, you know, two-spirit or anything like that, to be able to feel like they have a home with us as well, so that it's not just gay white men. And obviously I'm not a gay white man, so you know, it's going to change a little bit in that sense too. I don't know, Kai, if you have anything to add to this, or.
You know, I was listening to what Alex was saying, and talking about the token being, you know, generally seen as the white gay man. And when I think about tokenism, I think about this intentional type of recruitment by an organization to appear as if their organization is diverse and inclusive, right? And so in my opinion, I feel like tokenism, you first have to have a recognition. Like that has to be the first thing that happens, right? So you have to say, we are inclusive. We have gay people, or we are inclusive. We have Black people, right? As a student at Berea, I didn't necessarily feel the tokenism. I don't think that the stigma of the white gay man kind of activities actually occurred until there was a split from GSA to Harvey Milk. And then Harvey Milk became the more active group on campus. And so then that could be one of the reasons in which that stigma took place. Because the Pulse, what is now Pulse, was a very diverse group. So there were, you know, all letters represented. And I just think that when Harvey Milk just became the more active group, then it just appeared as if it was the white gay man stigma that may have come from that. So, I mean, that's just my opinion. I think it's also important to recognize that there are there's at least one other queer group on campus. And so students who are part of the queer community, they do have options to get involved. And, you know, hopefully one day the two groups can come back together and maybe do some collaboration together, so that everybody, you know, feels that they have a home no matter where they are.
Thank you, Kai. I think it was our hope to also include Pulse in this conversation, and it wasn't able to materialize. But I think that it's really important for people to know that it's not this singular spot for your identity, but in fact, there's multiple locations where one can express themselves. So Kai, you hit on some of the history of queer activism on campus. And the origins of Pulse and Harvey Milk. And I know you've seen so many iterations and are currently at the helm of Berea Pride. So for a question for you, and also for Dr. Lee and Alex, is, as you know, and I know Dr. Lee and I are new, but can we think about some of this history? of queer activism and how it dovetails with local community work?
Yeah, so can y'all hear that?
Is it an ice cream truck?
No, that's the emergency broadcast system. Must be test time. Excuse me. So yeah, having queer student organizations on campus is not new for Berea. It's my understanding, based on some of the research that I've been doing personally into the origins of queer student orgs on campus, the first official or documented queer group on campus was called the ACE League, and it was established in 1994. So queer activism has been happening on campus by the student body for quite some time. The name changed years later to GSA, and shortly after I graduated in 2011, it was changed to Pulse. So at least that one group has had, right, ACE League was the first name. And so it's had at least, that group has had at least 3 name changes in its existence. And then um, um, I can let Alex talk a little bit about how Harvey Milk came into existence.
Can I respond really fast? I think, so we're doing this research on gender equity at the college for the center. And what's really interesting is that we looked so hard in the archives for these records of ACE and GSA, and they're not there. Or at least they're not being collated in a way that tells us any information about the histories that we're living into. And I think that that's something that as a community we need to work on, right? Getting those stories in the archives. We had an event last week on the 15th that I think some of you tuned into about oral histories, right? And about collecting oral histories that can then be part of an official record of queer experiences in the community.
Mhm. And it's part of that oral history that kind of led to having the knowledge. One of the things I did as president was wanted to know, how did we get to where we were? And so I had an opportunity to meet with, or begin relationships with individuals who had started ACE League and still communicate to this day. And so that type of information has kind of been passed down. I'm not sure if it, what happened to it after I left, and if it continued to be passed down. But I think it's very important. I think it's important for the students to know that this isn't, the first time. Drag shows have been happening on this campus for a long time, um, and progress, whether slow progress, has been made, right? Um, I Okay, sorry, I was trying to circle back around to the question. And so Berea Pride started in the same sense. It started because of a student, Hunter Malone. He felt like, why should we always have to go to Lexington? I mean, I'm kind of paring it down, but why should we always have to go to Lexington to participate in Pride? Why can't we have Pride right here in Berea? And so he reached out to some other community members, and the first committee was formed, and we had our first Berea Pride Festival in 2018. Hunter graduated, and the committee continued. We didn't want it to, fall to the wayside, so we continued with what he started and had our second one in 2019. 2020s has been postponed. We'll see what happened. COVID threw a huge monkey wrench into our plans, but we'll see what we can do for this year. So that's just kind of like the short version of the origins. All of it has been because of the activism of the students on campus. And Berea Pride has just taken the opportunity during COVID to just try to solidify the future of Berea Pride so that we can continue to bring that to campus and or to the, excuse me, to the city of Berea in subsequent years. So does that answer your question?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that context. What a rich history that we inherit if we just knew about it. Do you want to speak a little bit about this, Alex, given what you know about the history?
So what I know about the history is more based on student word instead of based on like other people coming to tell us. So there were previous people before me that were in Harvey Milk and everything, and that's why I decided to go into it, because the people before I came in, which was last year, was the first year I was involved, was like a primarily white group. So also when I met Silas House, which was the head, I was like, okay, this is starting to make a little bit of sense because the president was a gay white man, the head was a gay white man, and from legends I'd heard from other people, it was primarily a gay white group. And they didn't have a good reputation when I first started. And I had heard stories like Kai had just explained. I had heard the stories of the negative connotations with the group. So me and a few other people decided to go into Harvey Milk, and we started working on reformations in the fall of last year. And we were planning to do a bunch of events for diversity. We were going to do a bunch of events for spring specifically, and then COVID hit. So we were planning to try and expand and be like, hey, we are not the stereotype. We are not the guideline that has been set for this group. And it was a lot more diverse. We had non-binary people. We've had like people of color in, you know, in our group. And I think our big thing was, since we were known as the white group, like the white gay group, I feel like that was a big change to try and change that, because a lot of it was always the gay white guy, the gay white guy. But now that everybody's in here, we were starting to not become the gay white guy group.
Thank you, Alex. I know Dr. Lee and I are new, but Dr. Lee, is there anything that you want to speak about with regards to history?
I mean, I've heard similar histories as what Kai and Alex said. And, you know, that's partly why we want to change our name, is so that we don't remain associated with just whiteness. And so, you know, we want to have more of an intersectional lens to our group. We haven't decided on a name yet, so I don't have like a big reveal, but, you know, we will definitely continue to work to be inclusive and to not be, you know, I'm trying to think of the right word, I guess, exclusive. Like there's no need for that. So, and I've been the new faculty mentor, however you put it, for Harvey Milk for about 3 weeks. So, you know, it's definitely like a work in progress. And Alex and I have talked a couple times, and we're on hiatus right now, but we're definitely motivated to change the name and to maybe change the guidelines and get up and going. So once COVID, whenever that may happen, you know, gets under control, we can start doing events.
I'm going to throw a wrench into these questions, which is that, you know, as Alex was speaking, I was reminded that a lot of what the Harvey Milk Society has done is to think about fair ordinance in Berea. And I know that that's something of interest to Berea Pride as well. Is that something any of you want to comment on? Alex?
So one thing that we were working on prior to COVID was the previous protests that happened in Lexington in that past fall semester. We were planning ordinances. We were getting a few community members to come in and work on how to set it up, because it had been rejected in the past. And this is not a new issue that it has been rejected. It's been rejected multiple times. So we were planning to get other people from other departments into getting all of it worked together, so that way there was no loophole. It was a way to express it to all of the, like, the town especially. That is a big conflict, is when you think about it, the college isn't bad about it. It's usually the townies that try to, that it conflicts with. So if we would have worked with town members, we were planning to work with other people higher up than us to get it to where it was a good guideline, to where it wouldn't have like, oh, but what if this happens? It was very straightforward. It was very, hey, we are not infringing upon anything that could happen to you. We just want to be protected, especially with recent events of protests and stuff. A lot of us are scared. So getting that out there, it's very, you know, it could happen. Anything could happen to any of us, especially because with that, a lot of group members have been hate crimed on this campus. A lot of people, they've came to us. I've personally been hate crimed since I've got here, even during COVID. And that should not be an issue of, hey, I want to walk to Walmart, but I'm scared somebody's going to hate crime me on the way there. So we want everybody to feel safe. And if that's going to, that shouldn't have to compromise anybody. Compromise is not what this is. It needs to be cooperation, because compromising means you have to give up something. Cooperation means get everybody to work together, so that way we wouldn't have to compromise something and everybody can feel safe in that one area. So hopefully either by spring or next fall, we can try to get back onto that to get where we were with the plans, where they stopped during COVID. And we can start going back to what we had and go back to those resources that we were given and try to make everybody feel safe on this campus, especially because it is a very harsh time right now.
Thank you, Alex. You know, I think that before I took the job, and I'm gonna extend this to Dr. Lee, and please correct me if I'm wrong, is that we heard about the taunts at the intersection. We heard about the way students who walk to Walmart are incredibly vulnerable, right? And so it's interesting that same shit, different day, right? That these things are not done, that it's not that we're post this, even as we're making so many efforts, right, to not be that. But in a way, you know, homophobia is not going anywhere. And there's nothing uniquely villainous about Berea's residents. There's nothing uniquely homophobic about Berea's students, but this is cultural. And as an anti-racist and anti-sexist and anti-homophobic place, we want to do better, right? And we want to be in conversation with our community about how to do better.
I think the key is the conversation. I think, you know, coming from rural Wisconsin and knowing rural America, oftentimes the college and the town are not in conversation. And so I think that is key. I know we're in a very terrible political time, and people have very, very strong opinions right now and maybe don't want to hear what we have to say, but we have to try. So I know there are allies in town, as Kai knows, and you know, there are people that are willing to work with us. So it's just a matter of us doing that. And that's definitely something Alex and I are going to continue to talk about.
Yeah, and as Country Queers is going to talk with us about tomorrow, is that just because some places rural doesn't mean it's necessarily homophobic, right? And so we need to temper our assumptions about some of these locations.
And I think, you know, for me, it's just a reminder to remind everyone, if you have the ability to vote. You know, even starting with city council here in the city of Berea, you know, having the right people in the right places can help bring about change. So do your due diligence, learn what you can about the people who are running for offices, see if they, you know, are allies to any of the communities in which you'd like to see some change, you know, brought about, and then vote for those people. Vote, put them in office. And then those are the people you know you can go to help bring about the change that we're trying to see.
Thank you. I want to remind the audience, please ask questions. We haven't gotten any yet. We did get a message from Jackie Collier that one of the things that we're trying to do with alumni is encourage some sort of affinity groups. So on the part of on the college. So thank you, Jackie, for that. But please do continue to ask questions, everyone. As folks trickle in those questions, I want to jump to the present, which is how do you feel that queer identified students and allies are active in the student organizations that are designed for them to be active? And what's changed over the years?
I'll start. I don't know. I feel like that's one of those rhetorical questions. Like I'm not seeing the activism. You know, I graduated, I left campus for about 3 years, and I was excited to come back. I was excited to help be a part of the community. You know, as a staff person on campus, and to let, like I said, to let students know that I was here. Like it does get better, right? Look, I survived. I'm still here. And it was hard to find out when club meetings were, whether it was for Pulse or for Harvey Milk. It was hard to be able to, I don't know, find the students to let them know that I was here, right? And so gender inclusive housing, that initiative kind of helped, and especially in terms of some of the programming that they did. And one of the staff members at that time knew that I was, you know, an out person, and so I was able to be invited to some of the programming. But in terms of activity, I think that's a question for the students. You know, have you all, if you're in this session, have you all been active in the groups that are there? And if you haven't, why? Why haven't you been active? And what could Harvey Milk or Pulse or even Berea Pride do to help you become active again? We had an opportunity as we were putting together Pride, to have some students on the committee that were quite active during that time period. But yeah, I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought. So I'm just curious to hear, you know, from the students, what's happened over the years that you're not as active anymore?
Alex, do you have anything that you want to share with us?
So from a student perspective and being involved with a lot of the community here, being in GIH, working with Harvey Milk, working with other groups and having activism on campus, I feel like in recent events, it's increasing. A lot of people are coming. So we had National Coming Out Day recently. It was about a week or two ago. And there were a lot of people, even if they weren't in the community, they wanted to stop by. They were curious. Why was there a painted door? Why were there so many people in this common space? And a lot of people actually came in and asked questions like, hey, why are you doing this? And it got a lot of participation. We got around 70 people, like on a Sunday of all time, to actually come in. So I feel like since we are making an effort in such a heavy time, I feel like that's going to help be like, we are still here. We are going through a difficult time. If you need someone, we are here. And that's also coming from not just Harvey Milk. That's not just from doing events for this kind of stuff. This is also, we're here, like GIH is here. We're trying to come up with as many resources as possible to give to students. So that way they aren't scared during this time. So let them know somebody is there. So like the center, like the Women and Nonconforming Center, that is a good place to go. We were working with you guys last year. It is a good place to go, and we advocate for that. Even if it might not be like the closest place for you, or it might not be like the perfect setting, you can still go there and somebody will understand. Somebody will be there for you. And with activism, we're working on that. We are planning to expand on it. It's already increasing much more than the previous year when I was a sophomore. So I feel like over time it will get better. And once we have those resources actually out there, we can send out emails to let people know about it. We put up flyers, we put in ads. Like once it gets out by word of mouth, or you can even just see a little email, like while you're going through your inbox, there's always going to be a resource there. And I'm working with my AC to get those resources broadcasted to first years, because first years, it is scary when you are a first year and you're like, oh, I don't know. I've heard, but I don't know. So we're trying to get our kids out there. We're trying to get our kids to be active and be like, hey, don't be scared to walk to Papolino's or walk to Mexican Hardee's to get food. Somebody will be there. We're giving them tips on how to like actually do things safely and do things to the point where they're not scared to do it anymore. So I feel like probably within the next 5 years, it'll be much better, because none of it is documented. You said earlier, most of this is not documented. A lot of it's hidden. So if we put ourselves out there to the point where you have to listen to us and you understand our points, and there's actual resources there, more people will eventually go in and be willing to have that conversation. There are many allies that are in gender inclusive that are willing to have that conversation. And we're having an event in mid-November to talk about like activism and resources. So that way you aren't scared to do things alone. And to have a whole event set up for that, it's just, you might not use them, but it's good to have them there. You might not need them, but a friend might need them. So even though they might not be used during COVID times currently, it's still good to have them in case it is needed for future reference.
Yeah, and I want to say that we were so excited to do the drag show with Harvey Milk. You know, and I'm so excited to pick that back up if you'll still collaborate with the Women's and Gender Nonconforming Center, because I mean that's what the nonconforming is for, right? And so we want to make sure that ours is a space that privileges and privileges queerness and the experiences of people of color, especially women and femmes of color, right? But that decenters whiteness and cis hetero privilege. And I think that, and a place to have fun. And I think that drag is something that can be all of those things. And so we thank you, Alex, for thinking with us about that.
Can I just add one thing? Is that okay? I mean, I think I've heard from multiple students, maybe some of them are in the audience, that there isn't really a gathering place for people, you know, to come together and have sort of an organization. Like I know Kai was talking about back in the day, there used to be like a little office in NAP or something like that where people could go, you know, and the Women's and Gender Nonconforming Center is certainly one of those spaces we're trying to make available for people. And we've even talked about maybe expanding the hours, but that's definitely a necessity, I think. And one of the first things we need to tackle is to find a space for queer students to congregate and to have time to hang out and do what they want to do. And I know, you know, sorry, Alex, I'm throwing you out there, but you're saying, we talked the other day and you said there's like really no place for you to go, you know, and so I think that it's really important for us to find that. I know it's COVID. I know that, you know, we can't have large gatherings right now, but for the future, it would be really important.
We really want to make the space open at night. And that's our first order of business once on-campus activities resume. And we're also in the process of trying to procure accessible furniture to try to make our space not just as friendly to gender non-binary students, but also to students with neuroatypicalities and disabilities. And so we do hope, but you know, it can't be a catch-all, right? And it's not to obviate the need for other spaces, institutional and informal, where there can be queer community. Yeah, there's a comment by Dwayne Mack, our VP of Diversity and Inclusion. And he says, there are white gay men who participated in the Selma March. They found community among African-American students in the 60s. And sometimes there is a hidden transcript within the transcript when people discuss their lived experiences. So I think what Dwayne is trying to get us to think about is that what is not in the records, right? That perhaps does indicate a kind of queer community building that perhaps You know, the archives don't state outright, but if we read against the grain, that we can see that. And you know, the potential for allyship.
I mean, I think there's a really vibrant Black Lives Matter movement in Berea. Not maybe not really, but there's rallies all the time, and there's definitely opportunity for coalitional work. You know, it's just a matter of figuring out how to do that in a global pandemic.
Absolutely, and I think the Breonna Taylor injustice has made it so clear that this kind of political demand must be intersectional and must think about that. Anything else about reading against the grain, or perhaps finding information that wasn't in the archive? You know, like, how do we find, like, you know, if there is no record of us, you know, how can we read between the lines? Can we read between the lines?
I mean, I don't want to.
I feel like,
Alex, please.
so I feel like social media is going to help us out from now, because a lot of the ways that we can find stuff that aren't in the archive is that we can talk to like previous alumni or people who were connected to the college at one point and get them to speak on it, because the archives not everything's documented. And I feel like now that social media is out there, even if it's not documented through Berea, it's going to be online somewhere. Everything's online at some point. So I feel like talking to previous alumni and like faculty and stuff, if they were here previously, we can get them to come together and be like, hey, like, do you remember this, if this was during their time? Because they might not have participated, but they could have had friends who participated in that, and that can at least be something closer. So even if that person might be gone or that person might be deceased, you still have that memory through that other person. So even people in the community, even though it's hard to get like people from the town to come in, there could be people from the town that remember certain events. So that's another way to get the town embedded with Berea, is to get them to actually talk about it. Oh, what was it from your perspective? Because our perspective could be completely different from theirs, but it's good to have different perspectives of the same thing. So that way we can, okay, at least from your perspective, this is what it is. So we can document that. Because Berea doesn't always have the same view as the outsiders, per se. So getting those different perspectives, they can add together, they can conflict, but at least you have different perspectives of the same topic. Because like Berea, the college might not remember it, but the town 100% remembers it. That's a good thing to have, because we might miss some details they remember, or they might miss details we remember. And to have like alumni back it up, that's probably a good way to get those resources down. Even if they weren't documented at the time, it's better to get them now than never.
Yeah, that's one of the things that Berea Pride is currently working on. It's just kind of a history. Like I talked about, you know, the history of the queer groups that were here on campus. And some of the people that, you know, I've been asked to reach out to are people who are just part of the community themselves, part of the town, not necessarily students or anything like that. So the hope was to create some sort of archive within Berea Pride for the queer community themselves. So, I mean, I have big dreams for what I hope we'll be able to do. I'd like to have some sort of library of some sort where we could have written documentation, if that expands to oral documentation or video or even books. You know, how often outside of what the Women and Gender Studies program does, do we talk about instrumental authors who are part of the LGBTQ community, so that the younger generation know what voices they can go and connect with, right? And so that's a project that's on our table as well. Um, Definitely, I could see a collaboration, that could happen between the student orgs and Berea Pride to try to help collect that data and get it situated. And I would admonish the queer groups on campus. I've heard a couple of times in this conversation the lack of information in the archives. Some of that has to come from you all. Take your posters, take your, flyers, put them in the archive so that take your pictures, whether they be on social media, whether they be submitted to your email accounts, put them in the archive so that you leave a trail for those that come after you. That's how stuff gets put in there. So don't be afraid, to have many layers of documentation so that it can be found. And you're welcome to send stuff to us too. We'll add it to our archives as well.
Thank you. I'm going to end with this question and about the future. So what do you feel is the next agenda item for your group, and how might that reach across the town and gown divide? And this goes hand in hand with the final question that Dwayne left for us, which is there a current effort to begin capturing these voices? We're hosting 2 oral history workshops, but in my response to Dwayne, I said, and I believe this, that there needs to be formal institutional research on the LGBTQIA+ community at Berea, and there's currently not. And the research we do have is, let me put it this way, it is negligible and seems incorrect, because some numbers that I got, for example, of transfer students who are queer identified list like 1 in the class of 2016, 2 in the class of 2018. When the Women's and Gender Nonconforming Center purchased Rainbow Graduation Course to distribute to queer identified graduating seniors in the class of 2020, 80 students in the class of 2020 alone self-reported. And remember, not everyone actually celebrated graduation because of COVID, right? So I think those numbers are really telling. And one thing that has been really important for our Pride series is to have, we had an event, last week on oral history, and the event with Country Queers tomorrow will continue that conversation. So how can we take Kai's admonishment to do the work and submit that work to archives, right? In a way that doesn't offload the responsibility of institutional research to do this formally, but that augments it in ways that allow us to give our own voice, to as Country Queers is encouraging us to think about, to tell our own stories for ourselves. Was that more a statement than a question? I didn't intend it as such. Well, yes.
I'm just curious with Alex, like what steps do you want to take next with Harvey Milk? I mean, we've talked a little bit about it, but not to put you on the spot, but.
It's totally fine. So what I was hoping for, if COVID calms down for this coming semester, that we were planning to get faculty and staff involved in some of our events. And this is brainstorming from previous semesters. We were hoping that we could get other ones involved to be like, hey, like we have hopefully this event can help you. And then we give out like little, like we were planning to make like resource cards. And we were planning to have like just specific days on like weekends or like certain areas. So like the Women and Gender Nonconforming Center is planning to expand those hours. So we were working on in the fall to have events or just days where like groups like Pulse or Harvey Milk just sit there and are there for those people to give them those resources, and then have like open events. So like National Coming Out Day was a big thing, but even if like that's already documented, and we were planning to submit all of our records, put it through Berea, put it in the archives, and then, okay, so this was a success, this was not a success. Okay, so what would fit where? So then we were planning to have just like smaller events, I would say, since that was a larger event, because some people might not be comfortable seeing 80 people in one room. So just have, like, give people the resources, give people the chance to actually speak up. Like, this is a good example of it. Like, have a few people share those experiences, and if they are a resource, be like, hey, you can reach out to me if you experience the same things I have. I can help. Or if I can't help you, we can get you to where they can. And we just need to be more of a resource, because doing events is fine, and letting people know you're there is fine, but you need to actually have the resources to help those people, because resources are a big thing that's very neglected or very not spoken about for the community. Because when I first got here, I didn't know anything. I was still technically in the closet. I was still all of this stuff, and I didn't have resources until someone flat out told me, hey, this is a resource. And the Women and Gender Nonconforming Center was the first resource I knew about. And then that's when I started doing research. So we need to give people the resources to do this research. We need to give the resources so people can figure it out on their own. If they need help, give them the help that they need to get where they need to go. Because if they don't get help, you're not going to grow as a person and understand it. And that can be scary for a lot of people. So just opening up Harvey Milk to whatever the name will be, just be like, hey, we are still here.
Thank you, Alex. And Dwayne adds that as an oral historian, his office is here to support any kind of information gathering and resource lending that we want to think about. And I really continue to encourage. Alex was such an instrumental interlocutor when I first got here. And we had several conversations about what the Gender Nonconforming Center could be and do. And I encourage you all to keep having those conversations with us, because our mandate is to serve you, right? And in the absence of formal institutional data, it's people coming in and talking to us, right? That helps us understand what resources don't yet exist on campus that we need to provide. So I wanted to also offer Berea Pride an opportunity to talk about their next steps before we end.
Thank you. Like I said earlier, I have big dreams. We've had an opportunity to take this time to create an umbrella organization that will house Berea Pride. It'll do some other things as well. And that was one of our efforts, just to be able to solidify, Pride's future. Ultimately, I would like to see Pride become so big that we have the community, the townspeople, the campus community involved, but we're also bringing economic growth to the city of Berea. I'd like to see us be able to fully book hotels and restaurants, and we're so busy, that everybody will need a vacation afterwards. I think that for Berea Pride itself, that would be one of our ultimate goals. So I look forward to seeing you all there when it happens.
We look forward to it too, Kai. I have such fond memories of Berea Pride last year. So thank you so much for creating a space for all of us. And thank you, Harvey Milk. And thank you all for joining us. We hope to see you tomorrow at 4 p.m. for our conversation with Country Queers. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.